Have you ever wondered what would happen if a fallen angel came back, not with rage, not with repentance, but with something sealed, something so powerful, even heaven refused to speak it aloud? Picture this. A lone figure approaches the gates of heaven, not in defiance, not in glory, but in silence. His robes are torn by darkness. His wings no longer burn with light. And in his arms, chained and pulsing with divine energy, is a scroll. The seraphim at the gates do not recognize him at first, but then they remember. He was one of them, not a warrior like Michael, not a herald like Gabriel, but a scribe, a watcher, a recorder of time and intention. His name was Namtael, and he had returned. But why would heaven allow back one who fell? Why did Lucifer claim so many, but never him? And most of all, what was written in that scroll? According to Revelation 5:1, even the Apostle John saw a scroll written within and on the back sealed with 7 seals, and no one was worthy to open it. But what if there was another scroll hidden from all creation, containing a prophecy so dangerous it was buried in silence before humanity ever walked the earth? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear has been whispered in apocryphal writings, hinted at by ancient mystics, and feared even by the Watchers. This isn't just a tale of rebellion and redemption. It's a story about a secret that might still be waiting to be unleashed. Don't look away now. What's sealed in heaven may soon echo on earth. Before the fall, Namtael's true role. Before the first man breathed, before the stars were cast into the tapestry of space, there were angels. And among them, not all were warriors, nor heralds, nor rulers of thrones. Some were watchers. Some wrote. Namtael was one of them. He is not found in canonized scripture, but ancient mystical traditions and symbolic readings echoed in apocryphal texts like the Book of Jubilees and Enoch speak of angelic orders beyond the well-known archangels, scribe angels, heavenly recorders. Namtael belonged to them. His title was believed to mean God's recorder, and his role wasn't to command or to fight, but to remember. He walked through the eternal palace not with a trumpet or a sword, but with a scroll and a pen fashioned from divine light. Namtael observed galaxies being born and logged the decisions of angels long before they acted. He didn't just write down events, he documented motives, intentions, secrets. This was his sacred charge. And unlike many scribes who were distant and clinical, Namtael was different. He loved what he saw. He marveled at the fragile beauty of humanity even before Adam was formed. He lingered at the edge of Eden's blueprint and wept at its perfection. But this depth of feeling, this awe, became a crack in the stone. When Lucifer began to question divine authority, when whispers slid like shadows through heaven's halls, Namtael didn't confront them. He didn't endorse them either. He listened not out of rebellion, but out of longing to understand. He wasn't trying to pick a side. He was trying to find the truth buried between them. That silence, his refusal to choose, would change everything. What happens when the one assigned to record truth begins to hesitate? That question is what still echoes in the records of eternity. And it brings us to the moment everything fractured, a fall without rebellion. The day war broke out in heaven wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud at first, it was quiet. A tension stretching across eternity, like a string pulled tight. And when it snapped, a third of the stars fell. Namtael was one of them. But he didn't fall with a roar. He didn't cry out in vengeance or pride. While Lucifer's voice burned with defiance, Namtael fell silently with his scrolls still in hand. He didn't draw a sword. He didn't rally troops. He simply let go. Can you imagine that moment? The sky breaking apart, Michael's blade splitting through constellations, the screams of angels turning to ash, and in the center of it all, Namtael frozen, not by fear, but by sorrow. Sorrow for what was being lost on both sides. He had listened too long, waited too long, and when the final line was drawn, he was already standing in the gray between light and darkness. And so heaven counted him among the fallen, not because he rebelled, but because he didn't resist. This kind of fall is harder to understand. We prefer villains or heroes. But what do we do with those who fall for neither reason? Namtael descended not in fire, but in silence. And the place he landed was not hell. It was something far worse. A place older than judgment. A realm where memory turns in on itself. The ancients called it the outer darkness. And it is there that Namtael would wander, scrolls clutched to his chest, unsure whether he was a traitor or simply forgotten. The abyss between heaven and hell. There is a place Scripture rarely names, but often implies a realm that exists not within the clear lines of heaven or the flames of hell. A place between. The book of Jude, verse 6, hints at it when it speaks of angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling. These he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. This darkness is not the lake of fire. It is deeper, quieter, more ancient. Some call it the abyss, others the outer darkness. But to those who have stood on its edge in visions or apocalyptic dreams, it is a realm where time decays, where light cannot hold its form, and where memory becomes a curse. It is where the watchers were cast, the angels who broke covenant and descended to earth. It is where regret breathes. This is where Namtael fell. He was not tormented with flames. He was not mocked by demons. Instead, he wandered in stillness, clutching his scrolls, while the ink refused to hold its shape. What he tried to write dissolved. Even truth unraveled in that place. Because the abyss is not simply a location, it is a distortion of divine order. A realm built not for punishment, but for observation, watching, waiting. Namtael was never claimed by Lucifer. That too is strange. Other fallen ones, Azazel, Samyazi, Astaroth, pledged allegiance and were given domains in the darkness. But Namtael walked alone. The demons did not trust him. Heaven had sealed its gates. He became a myth among the damned, the scribe without a throne, a ghost holding scrolls no one could read. And that's when something changed. Deep within the folds of the abyss, Namtael found a veil, not a door, not a gate, but a thin divide, a membrane between dimensions where heaven and hell overlapped for the briefest breath of eternity. And from beyond that veil, a voice spoke. It wasn't angelic, it wasn't demonic, it was something older. And it asked a single question. Why do you still carry the scrolls, the voice in the void? Namtael didn't answer the question out loud. He couldn't, not in a realm where even sound seemed uncertain. But the voice wasn't asking for words. It was testing something deeper, his purpose, his memory, his pain. And Namtael, with eyes dimmed by ages of wandering, responded the only way he could. He held the scrolls tighter. Because if he didn't carry the truth, who would? That silent answer unlocked something. The veil rippled, reality thinned, and then visions came. Not of what had been, but of what was still to come. Not the rebellion that shattered heaven, but a war yet unseen. A betrayal deeper than Lucifer's pride. A second falling. One so devastating it would make the first look like a tremor before the quake. Namtael saw it all, not as a prophecy to proclaim, but as a secret to protect. He began to write again, not history, not memory, but warning. Every detail poured onto the scrolls, names, events, moments not yet born. The ink held this time. The scroll changed. It no longer recorded past intention. It became a weapon of foresight, so powerful it could unmake alliances before they formed, expose traitors before they acted. And this is where Namtael's story breaks from every other fallen being. No angel had ever returned, not truly, not from the abyss, not with a record of the future sealed by divine hand. But Namtael didn't beg for mercy. He didn't plead to return. He simply turned and began walking back toward heaven, scroll in hand, eyes downcast, bearing something too dangerous to leave behind and too holy to carry any further. Return to the gates of fire. In every known account of the angelic order, from canon to apocryphal records to mystical tradition, no precedent exists for a fallen angel returning to the gates of heaven uninvited. And yet that is exactly what Namtael did. No rebellion in his stride, no plea for forgiveness, only burden. The gates he approached were not pearly arches adorned with song. According to Ezekiel and other visions of divine architecture, the entrance to heaven is guarded by seraphim angels of fire, whose wings shimmer like molten metal and whose eyes blaze like suns. They do not reason. They do not hesitate. They are the flaming line between purity and corruption. And yet, as Namtael stepped across the threshold of eternity, they paused. They knew him. He had once walked beside them, not as a soldier, but as a recorder. He had written their thoughts before they even spoke them. And now, that same figure knelt before them, worn, weathered, clutching a scroll, bound in chains of divine origin. The seraphim raised their swords. The heat around them surged. Still, Namtael did not flinch. He knelt. And in that moment of suspended judgment, the sky shifted. Michael appeared, the archangel of war. His sword still radiant with the memory of battles fought before time began. His voice thunder, his presence absolute. And he asked a question only a commander could ask: Namtael, why have you returned? And the answer: because what I carry does not belong in hell and cannot remain in my hands. Michael hesitated, not because he feared the scroll, but because he saw something in Namtael's face that unsettled even a warrior of heaven. Fear. Not fear of judgment, not fear of death, but fear of what was coming. Namtael had not returned to ask for mercy. He had come to warn them. The trial before the throne. Heaven has its laws, its courts, its process. Even angels must stand before the throne. Namtael, once a silent observer of divine judgment, now became its subject. Led by seraphim and shadowed by Michael, he crossed the radiant corridors of eternity, not as a son returning home, but as a question heaven did not know how to answer. The throne of God, as described in Revelation 4, is surrounded by 24 elders, flashes of lightning, peals of thunder, and a sea of glass like crystal. Before this throne, even the righteous tremble. Even the worthy fall face down. For those marked by rebellion, the presence of the Almighty is not glory, it is unmaking. But Namtael was not unmade. He was allowed to speak. He did not give excuses. He did not defend his silence during the rebellion. Instead, he unwrapped the scroll now sealed in chains, etched with divine light, and laid it before the throne. And as he did, something shifted among the elders. They turned their eyes away. No one read it aloud. No angel sang. Namtael spoke only one sentence. This was never meant to be known, but I could not let it be lost. There are many theories, some found in fragments of early mystical traditions, others passed down in whispers by desert monks and Kabbalists. Some believe the scroll revealed the name of a second betrayer, an angel still in heaven, whose future treachery would ignite a final war. Others suggest it exposed what God whispered to Lucifer in the instant before his fall, the phrase that made the morning star smile as he descended. And some say the scroll held the final record of humanity's test, and who among heaven would fail. Whatever the truth, only one thing is certain: God read it. And then for 7 days, heaven was silent. No song, no movement, no light, just silence. And on the 7th day, a decision was made. Namtael would not be destroyed, but he would never return to the choir. He would be permitted to remain on the edges of glory, a witness, a watcher, still holding the scroll that no one would ever read again, until the very end. The watcher on the edge of glory. Namtael was not cast into outer darkness again, but neither was he restored. He was given no robe, no rank, no return to the choir whose voices he once recorded. He did not walk among the thrones or tread the courts of the righteous. Instead, he was stationed intentionally, eternally, at the boundary where heaven ends and time begins. The edge of glory. This is where he waits. Imagine that, to stand close enough to hear the songs of angels, yet never sing with them again. To witness the light of the throne room, but never feel its warmth on your face. To know that redemption was not denied, but neither was it complete. Namtael became something different. Not a warrior, not a messenger, not even a scribe, not anymore. He became a witness, a presence, a reminder that some roles in God's design are not about action, but about watching. He watches earth, he watches heaven, and perhaps he watches us. This isn't mythology for entertainment, it's a mirror. Because some of you watching this know exactly what it feels like to live at the edge of a place you once called home. To stand just outside of belonging. To carry a truth no one else can see. Maybe that's why Namtael was allowed to remain. Not because he was right, but because he was willing to bear the burden of memory without asking for reward. He watches not as a spy or judge, but as a sentinel. One who knows what's coming. One who is waiting for the sign that the sealed scroll must be opened. And when it does, his silence will end. A scroll sealed with silence. Throughout biblical history, scrolls have always carried weight. They weren't just documents, they were declarations, covenants, judgments, and prophecies. The prophet Ezekiel was told to eat a scroll filled with lamentation and woe. Zechariah saw a flying scroll that cursed the thieves and liars of Israel. And in Revelation 5, John wept because no one in heaven or on earth was found worthy to open the scroll sealed with 7 seals. But Namtael's scroll was something else. It was not given, it was returned. What exactly it contained is unknown. No angel has described it. No record was added to the heavenly texts. Even the scribes of eternity, those who chronicle the thoughts of stars and the breaths of kings, were forbidden to copy it. But the effect it had was unmistakable. Those who merely glimpsed it went silent. Some began to fast without command. Others fell into tears for reasons they could not name. And a few, those closest to the throne, began to watch the skies with unease. Tradition and speculation have offered many theories. One of the oldest passed down in whispered circles of mystical scholarship says that the scroll contains a single name, the name of the next betrayer. And not Lucifer, not one from the old rebellion, but another, a trusted one, still in heaven. If that name were revealed too early, it could spark a preemptive strike. A war not led by prophecy, but by fear. And if heaven moved before its appointed time, half of creation could be consumed in flame before the seals of revelation are even touched. So God made a choice: silence. The scroll was sealed not just physically, but metaphysically wrapped in 7 layers of divine inscription. Hidden in a chamber no angel may enter, guarded by a being whose name is not known. Only God can unseal it, and only when the end truly begins. Until then, it remains a weapon wrapped in restraint. And Namtael, he lives with its memory, because he didn't just carry the scroll, he wrote it, the weight of knowing. It's one thing to be forgiven, another to be restored. But Namtael was neither. He was entrusted with something far more difficult: silence. Imagine carrying a truth so dangerous it could unravel the order of heaven itself, a truth you cannot speak, cannot share, not even with those you love. That's the burden Namtael bears. Not punishment, not exile, but knowledge and obedience. Every day he watches. He sees the sons of God rise and fall. He hears the songs of angels blend with the cries of earth. And somewhere deep in his knowing, he wonders, has it begun? Is this the moment the scroll warned of? Could you carry that kind of weight? Could you remain silent while the world turns towards something terrible? Could you watch others step toward disaster knowing you're not allowed to say a word? Namtael does. Not because he's emotionless, but because God said, not yet. And that might be the most haunting part of his story. Not that he fell, not that he returned, but that he now waits. With the memory of betrayal already recorded, with the name already written, with the knowledge that when the time comes, he will not fight with a sword, but with a truth that has waited since the first rebellion. Namtael is not a hero. He is not a monster. He is a mirror. Because you and I live in the space between what he saw and what hasn't happened yet. The silence is thinning. Can you feel it? Conclusion, the final witness. We've followed Namtael from the heights of heaven to the depths of the abyss and back again. But the story doesn't end with his return. It lingers. It waits. Because the scroll he carries is still sealed. That's where we are now, living between the silence and the sound. Between the sealing of the scroll and its unsealing. We don't know what's written inside. Maybe we were never meant to. What matters isn't what Namtael saw, it's what we choose to see now. Are we awake to the tremors beneath the surface of our world? Are we paying attention to the signs that don't scream, but whisper? Are we willing to live as witnesses like him? Perhaps Namtael isn't watching from a distance. Perhaps he stands closer than we realize beside your bed, when you weep alone beside your desk, when you choose honesty over gain beside your heart, when you forgive what others say is unforgivable. Maybe in his scroll, there's not only a name of betrayal, but names of faith. Maybe yours. You don't need a flaming sword. You don't need wings. You only need eyes that see and a heart that remembers what the world forgets, that heaven is still watching. And sometimes so is a fallen angel one who came back from the dark with one final warning. If this mystery stirred something in your spirit, don't walk away from it. Stay curious. Stay watching. Subscribe for more truths buried beneath the surface. And until the scroll is unsealed, listen closely. Because the end may not begin with a trumpet. It might begin with a whisper. Maybe the most haunting part of Namtael's story isn't the scroll itself, or the war he foresaw, or even the silence of heaven. It's this: God let him come back, not to redeem him fully, not to restore his place, but to make him a witness, a quiet sentinel on the edge of eternity, holding a secret so heavy it could only be carried by someone who had walked through both light and darkness. And maybe that's the message left for us. There are times when we don't get the answers we want, times when we're asked to wait, to watch, to carry truths we don't fully understand. But perhaps that's not a punishment. It's a calling. In a world obsessed with noise, with certainty, with sides, maybe what heaven values most is someone who listens, who remembers, who stands quietly for the light, even when no one else sees it. So if you've ever felt like you're living in the in-between, belonging and being lost between clarity and silence, you're not alone. Namtael's story reminds us that God sees those who carry weight in silence, that even those who fell might still be called to watch. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this journey stirred something in your spirit, if it made you wonder about the mysteries just beyond the veil, I invite you to subscribe and join me for more. Because there are still truths waiting to be uncovered, still scrolls sealed in silence. Until next time, may you walk with open eyes, carry your light with quiet courage, and remember, heaven is still watching. And sometimes so is a fallen angel.